Maros, welcome, brother. Thanks for coming on my podcast, man. It's a pleasure to have you on and to see you again.
Hi Dan, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, no worries. So, since starting Masculine Evolution, this is the first podcast, and I thought who better to have on than a friend, someone I consider a friend now, and I also consider a coach. Um, for those listening, I attended Mouse's 3-day workshop in Bucharest called Masculine
Bratislava.
Bratislava, yeah, called Masculine Edge. And the whole idea of the workshop, and correct me if I'm wrong, although there was many aspects of it, it seemed like the overall teaching was helping men to step into more tension in life. And tension is a word that represents what comes up inside of us when we step towards fear and discomfort. And our goals in life that we're either struggling to attain or we're just avoiding attaining them completely tends to come from the fear that is in the way, and that brings it back to the tension. And the more we can handle tension in our body, the more likely we are to step towards discomfort and then attain the things that we want, specifically in the realms of business and relationships with women.
Yes, yes, that's correct. I would put it simply, the reason why we exist in Masculine Edge is that we want to help men lead better under emotional tension. And that means leadership skill set, and that contains self-leadership, leadership of the woman, leadership of people around you, leadership of your business associates, and handling tension, which is the other side, which is the wounding. Like, how do I handle the discomfort, handle the fear, handle the anger, all of these experiences that are arising out of emotional tension. So when you put the two together, men are able to lead better under emotional tension and get more out of life in all business, relationships, and personal life.
Brilliant, man. So, you said handling emotional tension.
Yes.
So we've got some, let's say there's a man who is avoiding stepping on his path. And that could be said that he's not good yet, or he hasn't developed the ability to handle the emotions that come up when he does so.
Mhm.
How does that look? How might someone not, when someone doesn't handle that emotional tension, what's generally going on for him?
Yeah. So I think here the easiest example to give would be that of a person who runs the nice guy pattern or the nice guy syndrome. Because one of the nice guy things is that he believes that he has to fit in the world in a way that's going to make him be okay, in a way that make things easier or like less effortful, or he has to become what he needs to become in order to fit in. And there is one fundamental flaw in his thinking, and that is, if I do everything right, I will have a safe and problem-free life. And by doing things right, he means avoiding emotional tension. So because of the wounding and the defense mechanisms that he has in his, like that he accumulated, he believes that when he feels emotional tension, he's doing something wrong. That's why he's not going to set a boundary. That's why he's not going to say no. That's why he's not going to, when a woman tells him something that's disrespectful, he's not going to say, "Hey, that was disrespectful. Don't do that." Because he believes that he knows that if he did those things, he would feel a lot of tension, and he is so firmly convinced that that's wrong and that's a signal that something is going in a really bad way that he's just not going to do it. And instead, he's going to try to change himself, to adjust himself so that he can fit in what the woman needs, what his boss needs, what his parent needs, what his roommates or flatmates need, in order for it to be okay. And it is possible to live like that, but it's a very limited way of living. And when it comes to actually achieving something great and having a fulfilling life of adventure and feeling alive in life, what has to happen is that you have like a man has to set goals, and then he has to handle the tension that is required to get them, to achieve them. So if he is in a relationship where a woman is being continuously disrespectful, she's blaming, or she has some stuff that from the past that is making her do those things, the wounding that drives that. If he wants to have a good relationship, he has to be able to step into the tension and set those boundaries, say no, call out disrespect, and do all those things and handle the tension. He has to accept the fact that there's no other way around goals achievement and making his vision come into the reality other than through navigating the tension. Business is the exact same thing. Like he has, like it's uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable, and it's normal that it's uncomfortable. But there's a way to handle the uncomfort that's proactive without having to try hard and burning yourself out to become what everyone needs you to be. So there's a it's on one side, it's shift in thinking by accepting the fact that emotional tension is normal and it's okay and it's good, and start to live in a way that's aligned with that. That's the mental part, and then there's the emotional part or the physical part, where actually he learns the techniques how to handle that tension, how to process those feelings, how to process the discomfort without going crazy.
Brilliant. I'd love to hear about the techniques, but before, um, no, it's gone now. What are some of the techniques that guys can utilize that's going to allow them to step into tension?
Mhm. Well, there's multiple ones, and everybody's different, so different things work for different people. Generally speaking, one path is somatic, which means processing the tension through the body, allowing the tension in the body, feeling it and processing it. Another one would be more mental. That's more for people who have fast minds and who need like a strong need to have control. And there is a process called releasing that you can actually notice and learn to recognize where your mind is going and work with your mind in order not to create resistance to that tension. And the third one would be emotional. That's for guys who are well connected with their feelings, well connected with their emotions, where they just process it that way. These would be the three paths. And the way that those techniques, all of them works, is by shifting from resistance to tension, which is something that we do naturally unless we learn these things, into acceptance of the tension and appreciation of the tension, allowing to work its way through the body, through you, through the mind in the way that it needs to. There's a great book that talks about this, Dr. David Hawkins, Letting Go. It's something that was very helpful for me in the beginning of my journey, but also what's his name? Michael Singer talks about this a lot in Untethered Soul. Somatic processing, somatic releasing, which is a huge therapeutic, like how we call it,
Movement.
like like direction these days,
Hmm.
very popular and very effective. Is doing the way in the somatic way.
Interesting. It seems like this journey of going from I can't do these things because of the thing everything outside of me. I can't do it because of other people's opinions of me, fear me. I can't do it because I don't want to anger other people. It's usually around other people, right? At least it has been in my journey. And when we blame anything outside of ourselves for the effect it has on us, my understanding is we essentially disempower ourselves. So we're like, oh, they're responsible for how I feel. What you're talking about is stopping that essentially and coming in and saying, oh, okay, the reason I'm not moving forward, I'm not going after the things I want in life, it's not because of other people. I'm not going to blame feminism, Me Too, whatever. It's actually my reaction to them. So it's really me. And
Yeah,
by coming in, and now I understand, and really, when not only that, it's just the mindset shift within to go from I'm avoiding tension to I'm going to start stepping into it,
yeah,
or I'm gonna go into it, seek it out.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Like taking responsibility and accepting that you are responsible for every experience that you have in your life is huge. And it
Mm,
was, I can say that it's the most important thing in recovery, and I mean in recovery from the past wounds and from trauma, and at the same time to create the life that you want, because unless a person takes responsibility, they are in the victim mindset. And
mm,
it's kind of sounds a little bit black and white, but I really believe it's like that. And there are like in my life, like sometimes it was extreme where I would be on the receiving end of very bad behavior from my partner, and I would be like this is shit. And I don't like this. But if I just stay with it and I keep blaming, like there's nothing I can do.
mm,
And eventually I shifted like all of those things, and it's difficult. It's really really difficult. I would say that this is at the edge of like psychological versus spiritual, because when you are really having the experience that like kind of objectively you are in the being in the victim position, it's really difficult to take responsibility in those moments. But
mm,
just like Abramade says, like even the trauma, like you can take responsibility for the traumatic events that happened in the past, because it's not about what happened to you, but it's about what happened in the head as those things were happening to you. And that's like that's our decision. That's what we did. And
mm,
because of that, that's the empowering part, because that's why we can shift that. So
mm.
I fully agree with you.
Nice, man. It would seem that by allowing anything outside of us to influence our inside, so when we allow the outside world to affect the inside world, we we're coming from a place of attachment and therefore fear, and therefore um, our sympathetic nervous system, and all of that means that in terms of the levels of consciousness which David Hawkins mapped out, right, the levels of emotion, it's kind of hard to experience life from the higher emotions that we want to, like courage and above. It seems that when we're attached to other people and opinions and everything else, that naturally puts us in the into the lower levels, and actually brings our energy down, puts us into survival mode. And like you say, once you're in survival mode, we're trying to get out of that, but it's hard to, because we're still attached to other people, other things outside of us. We're not. So the empowerment comes from understanding that, oh shit, okay, I've got everything I need within me now. I don't need to change
Mm.
his or her opinion so I can start doing this. It's like I can do it anyway.
Yeah. 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 I think this has two sides. Like one is the one that you described, that when we really are attached to other people's opinions, when I believe that other people's judgments are extremely important, then it's gonna be at my expense at some point. But at the same time, I think it has the other side, which is like connection with the real life. Like we do care what other people think, and it's okay to care what other people think, because it's part of what it means to be a human being. Like you do, I think you do want to care what your like what your
Mm,
fiance is thinking about you, or your business associate. So as long like the more you care, the more you will be the more it's going to be painful. So I would say the other side, like the question is, what do you get, like what do you choose to get attached to? What do you choose to be your grounding stone on which everything else is built on? And many people have their past as this. Because I went through this when I was a kid, I am destined to be like this, and this what justifies me behaving like this today and in the future because of my trauma. And the biggest shift that I experienced is that you can actually choose this, because everything changes in the universe all the time. So you choose what you get attached to. And I think the best thing to get attached to is your vision, the
mm.
vision that a man has for the future, and make decisions from there and evaluate from there. And if you go through these attachments and you see these aversions, like you change it, and you're refining the way you think, you're refining who you are, but in relation to the vision, so that that vision can become a reality.
Oh, I love that, man. So can you talk through that process? How? So there was a point in your life where you stopped being attached to your story and your past, and instead you focused on your vision and where you're going. Can you talk a little bit about that process and some of the things that happened to you as a result?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, sure. I'm thinking because it was a very interesting process for me. I was blaming my father for everything, and I had a perfect story put together, like with examples and everything. I was in therapeutic circles, and I would talk about this, and the therapist would be like jaw dropping, like, "Wow, like you really went through this," and it gave me so much validation, that I like the first stage was that I had no idea what was happening. I thought that I'm mentally ill and that like my life is falling apart, my mind is, just like I'm going crazy. And then I discovered about trauma and about like what happens in the mind as a traumatic response and how the body works and everything. And I put together the story of what actually happened. And then I was just blaming him everywhere. And it was a relief because I at least had control. I still felt like shit, but I at least had control because I mentally speaking knew why. But over time I learned that it feels nice to get that validation, but it's the same thing over and over again. And I kind of like milked that cow enough. And it sounds like it happened in a moment, but this was a long process that took several years. And once I was after a workshop where I was assisting, and I had this realization that that if I still keep doing those things that are consequence of those experiences in the past, because I justified with the past, I'm gonna have my future influenced by that, and I can't do anything about that. Like this is set, and the only way how I can stop this and how I can reverse this is actually by choosing and deciding about what kind of future I want to have, what kind of life do I want to live. And this realization hit me so hard that I was like, this is the number one priority because this is what's going to decide about my career, about my relationship, about my family life, finances, health, everything. So I put everything on the side. I booked a flight to Italy, to Naples and I was there alone for 6 days. And I was just walking around Naples, like having fantastic food, like getting inspired by the city. And I was just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing for 6 days, visualizing and thinking about like if I could live a ideal life, what would it look like? And this allowed me to connect with things that I really, really wanted. I had it written down very, very specifically. On a sixth day, I was reading the whole thing out loud to myself. I was crying for like 20, 30 minutes out of joy, out of gratitude, out of happiness. And since then, I started to do this shift to whenever I start to have these thoughts that are bringing me in the past, where I want to justify some inaction, passivity, or some reactiveness, procrastination, that, oh my God, I went through this. I shift into, okay, this is what I want. Who do I need to become in order to get this? Who do I need to be in order to get this? If I can't, who do I need to speak with to get help in order for me to become the person that I want to be? And it's a process still. Like I do have my weak moments when there's too much stuff, and I have a tendency to go in the past, like in the back, but it's a habit. It's just a conditioned habit, and now I'm consciously moving it to the other direction. And the thing I said in the beginning, for example, that's something I have realized in the meditation a few weeks ago, that it does sound like when you think about it, it kind of sounds like common sense. Like you had your past like this, so it's gonna like it does affect the future. They say that the first 5 years in a child's life is going to be the determinant of what the rest of life is going to be looking like.
Mm.
But the thing is, if you go into physics and metaphysics, like everything changes in the universe. There's nothing fixed. So if that's true, then it must be true that that can be also changed. And that's just like reinforced this whole idea about the vision and anchoring myself to the vision even more. And it's happening. And it's happening. I've been changing those things that I was attached to for a long time. I got my mental health back, emotional stability back. I have an amazing relationship. I had the business that I love. So It's happening. It's happening exactly the way I planned it out in Naples. Like some things are even better, which I couldn't see coming. Some things are not there yet, but it's happening.
Oh, amazing, man. Can you share how you got to that point of crying with joy from your about your vision? So were you, because we hear a lot from manifestation teachers that you have to uncover the feeling of living that reality, not, oh, when I get there, I'll feel like this. It's like, I want to feel that now as if almost like I am, right? And it seems
Yeah.
like if you're crying with joy, I mean, that's a very high state to get to. That to me is like, I mean, how can you not get achieve that if you can feel that good about a goal? So how did you get to that point? And if it was to do with the writing, like what were you doing with your writing that got you into that state?
I think the most important thing when it comes to all this manifestation stuff is the belief. Like you have to believe that it's true and that it's going to work. That's how like the whole placebo effect works. Right? As long as you truly really believe it's going to change the way you feel, it's going to change the way your body is, and it's going to have an effect. And for me, when it comes to my vision, back then that was the highest state that I got to. I got there again multiple times, but I never felt it in its wholeness as much as I felt it in Naples 6, 7 years ago. And the reason why is because when I realized that I'm saying this story about how I'm a victim of things and I'm finally having control and it's a relief, but I'm still in the victim position. And I still believe that I have a limited future because of that. I realized the severity of consequences if I keep doing the same in the future, right? So I had a very clear pain motivation not to do that anymore. And I also had very clear motivation what to do instead. And when it comes to pleasure, I knew how the reticular activating system works in the brain. Is that like the stuff is not about esoterics and manifestation and talking about like fluffy stuff. Like this is how the brain works. This is how the brain is wired. Like if I'm gonna be living in that, repeating that, believing in these things, it's gonna happen, and it's inevitable. So I knew that if I do the opposite, but I just do it consciously, it's gonna change my life, and there is nothing I can do about that. There's nothing anyone can do about that. So I had 100% certainty and belief that this is what works and this is what's going to help me. And I had like an extreme urgency because I knew that now like I feel that this is true and like a little window is open, and during this window I have to make absolutely everything that's in my power in order to make it happen. So this was the place where I was doing it from, because you can do the same because you read it in a book and you don't really believe in it, and it's going to have zero effect. In fact, it's going to just create more resistance to everything esoteric or like everything that is related to this. So this was the background and the belief. And then specifically, I wrote down first, I have like a whole process for this that I do with my clients. And first I wrote down the ideals, like just like freely talking what I would love to experience, like what I would, when I think about a house, what I would like to experience, when I think about my family, when I think about finances, when I think about friends and relationships, when I think about wealth and career success. And I was just freely speaking, and then I freely writing down everything in the Excel. Then I put it down into 5 or 6 categories, right? Like wealth, health, relationships, family, and so on. And when I had that, I was I was writing down. I closed my eyes. I moved myself in the future, and I think about okay, and I was thinking, okay, if this is the ideal, what would life look like 5 years from now if I was living exactly this? And I closed my eyes and I just allowed my imagination to bring up, okay, what it would look like with my with the woman in my life. And I would imagine the conversation, like the endless conversations, the curiosity, the laughter, the banter, the flirt, the adventurousness. I would imagine her feminine radiance. I would imagine how it's inspiring. I would imagine the support that I would get from her. And I would imagine us sitting in the coffee and talking about these things and me celebrating my successes with her. And she, like very specific things. Here, I didn't know this back then. Now I know it. When it's visual, when you can see those things, you hear those things, you feel those things, and you know those things, you're activating the input system that are basically like in NLP, it's called representational systems that are putting information in your brain that your brain then processes. So if you see it like this, your brain is almost as if it was having the experience now. So I wrote this in all the fields 5 years from now, then 10 years from now, then 30 years from now, and then 50 years from now. So I was imagining myself like in my 90s. And the crazy thing about this is that when I just went into that process, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, I closed my eyes and I was like, okay, what do I look like when it comes to my health when I'm in my 90s? And the first thing that came into my mind was a person with a stick. And I'm like, how the fuck did a person with a stick in my vision of me being 90-year-old in my health appear? Like, where is that coming from? And this just confirmed my hypothesis. Like, if you don't make these choices consciously, what's going to happen is that which you associate with that naturally based on your conditioning with your family, with culture, with the society where you are living, and all these things. So, and then that was just like even more fire in this entire process.
Mm.
And I kind of replanned and I designed the way I want it to be throughout the whole thing. And then when I read through the whole thing, like all the way from the beginning, from the ideal to the 90, I was like, this is how I want my life to be. And I felt this massive relief and this massive feeling of like completion of the process. Like now I know. And now I'm not destined to repeat the same mistakes again. I'm not destined to live in the trauma and like just like circle myself in it over and over again. And it kind of accumulated in this big emotional experience that I
Wow.
described.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Yeah, so powerful, huh? Especially,
I was sitting in a coffee shop and there were a couple of people like in the room and I was like they must have thought that I'm going through something like majorly like,
a mushroom
difficult
trip or
because I
something
was
else.
just there sobbing. It was amazing.
Especially about the walking stick. So essentially that image of the walking stick came out of your unconscious, and that seems to be where we're what we're creating from. The unconscious doesn't know the difference between real or imagined events. So you're going
Yeah.
into your imagination and seeing this new reality that you want to create for yourself. And then now the unconscious isn't going to send out fear and avoidance of that because you fed it something new, right? And
Yeah.
the positive feelings connected with the imagined result kind of affirms that that's safe. Would you agree? Because it seems like we avoid what we're afraid of because our unconscious doesn't want us to die. But if we then change our feelings around what we're currently afraid of to feel good about, there's more of a natural stepping in that direction. Is that how you see it?
Um, I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you say it again?
Yeah, I guess it was just putting my point in terms of what you were saying is like you're positively by feeling good about an imagined event, you're sending positive signals to your unconscious mind that
Hmm.
that's safe, that
Hmm.
that's
I see.
good. So like having a deeply loving relationship, that if there's fear, unconscious fear around that, we'll tend to avoid it. But if
Hmm.
you imagine yourself in that reality with the good feelings, your unconscious is going to see that as something to work towards rather than avoid.
Yes, yes. I would say the unconscious is like a trained, you can make an analogy. The unconscious is like a trained animal. Like you teach it stuff. And based on what you teach it, that's kind of feedback that it's going to give it back to you.
Okay.
If you start a habit, you teach your unconscious that this is what's normal, this is what feels good. And then if you stop doing the habit after 4 months, it's going to feel strange, right? And
Mm,
it feels strange as a reaction of your unconscious. That's the emotional aspect of that. And we are training the unconscious mind all the time. Like if you keep watching random stuff on Facebook Reels and it's full of like negativity, like the mainstream news and like all this stuff, like it's gonna be there in your head, and it's gonna be it's gonna create the environment where you live in.
mm,
And when I was doing that process, I was basically like it's called reconditioning. Like you retrain what you want to believe is right and true. And for example, like the walking stick, like my grandma lived until her age of 100. And when I was a kid, it's like she was the oldest person that I was dealing with. And she was always walking with a walking stick. So it's not that like there's something wrong with me because I had like an image of a 100-year-old Maros with a walking stick. It's just factual stuff that I experienced and that I associated is that I associate with that. And by changing this, you can either change this by highly emotional experience, just like people change like this after a car accident, or by structured repetition,
okay.
where you'll slowly change that. And yes, like when you receive a positive reaction, that's your unconscious mind accepting your suggestion to it. And that's how it starts to change.
So, did you have uncomfortable feelings around maybe moving back a bit from when you were 90, for your 90-year-old vision, more like in the next sort of 3, 5 years, when you imagine yourself in the sort of relationship that you desired and the sort of business, were there, it, so in order for you to feel great, you must have worked through uncomfortable emotions. Is that right? Because you didn't just straight away feel good. So were you actively releasing emotions that were standing in the way of feeling good? And if so, what was your process to do that?
Mhm. I did this process long before I learned about releasing and emotional processing. So I was very intuitive about this. But I did experience a lot of resistance. I remember I came to Naples, I put my things down, I went to have pizza, obviously. And then I came back to my apartment and I said, okay, now I'm gonna start. And I just didn't want to start. Like
Mm.
I literally had like physical discomfort. Like I don't want to do this. And my mind was like coming up with stuff like this makes no sense. This is pointless. What do you think you are? You just came to Naples to have fun and you rationalized it with this bullshit exercise and all this stuff. And I remember like I was standing, leaning against a closet, like looking in the room and just breathing and just calming myself down. Like it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to have these thoughts. I know what's the right thing to do and I'm gonna do it. It's okay. I know this is the right thing to do and I'm gonna do it. I know it might be uncomfortable in the beginning, but I'm gonna get through it and I'm gonna do it because this is important and I know it's right. And like this, like it went down from maybe 9 out of 10 to 3 out of 10. And then I started writing. And after 10, 15 minutes, I got into flow state and I was in that flow state for like the next 6 days.
Wow. Hmm. Yeah, that's such a big lesson for people, I think, and me as well. Because I definitely avoid writing. I'm still, I can't, I know that trying to bulldoze my way through life because I know I can get the things that I want, but I'm not really sitting with myself and getting to know that reality internally that I want. And it's more like, okay, what can I do? What are the things that I can do that are going to get me there? And it becomes more of a fight. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is you went in, and then when you were ready internally, now you can start taking the steps forward in life.
Yeah.
But and that did that allow and that allows for less tension, essentially, I'm guessing.
Yes. And I would say that I have accidentally, without knowing about the process back then, I have manufactured a perfect circumstances for flow state because I knew I had a clear leverage. Leverage is the contrast between the pain and pleasure. I had a huge pain associated with not doing it because I know that I'll just be repeating my experiences from the past and the thinking from the past that got me where I am today. And I had a huge pleasure of knowing that if I just condition my brain and my mind and I put this seed inside my head, I will experience it because that's what I've been doing since the last 15 years or 20 years at that moment. So I knew this is an absolute must that I cannot go that I cannot go without for another day. That was the first thing. Like I had a huge internal motivation. The second thing is that I made a choice to go into Naples, which for me was the most inspiring environment that I could do. Like the Italian culture, like a lot of emotion, um, like experiencing this in their amazing food, amazing coffee. I love pizza. I love tiramisu. I love coffee. So I like the environment. I had a nice apartment in the nature. So I had my environment, the external factor, and my internal motivation were at like the maximum for this. That's why it was easy to do. And I
Hmm.
think like many times people, I don't know what was your experience, like if you ever tried to do this, but many times people hear it in the podcast and then they sit down in the afternoon for 20 minutes and they're like, I'm going to think about my future. I'll see what happens. Like, well, nothing happens because like because it's a very difficult internal and the external environment to think about this. I made this an absolute number one priority for a week, and that's a whole different experience.
Did you have your phone with you? I just think the phone's just such a big distraction for things like this.
I don't remember. I think I had, but I just turned it off. Like I put
Yeah,
it on in a flight mode. I think I don't remember, but if I had to do it again, I would say to everyone that I'm not going to be available for a week.
yeah, yeah. No, go somewhere with no phone, no electronic, no laptop, and then when all the resistance, I can just imagine myself, doing it now, and just so much discomfort in the body around sitting with myself for that amount of time. I'm
Yeah,
needing to like distract myself. Oh, I'll have a one more coffee and then I'll start. Oh, just a bit of time on YouTube and then I'll do it.
I see. So one thing you can try is to write down what would happen if you never do this. What
Mm,
will happen if you never ever sit down for a vision to consciously make decisions about how you want your life to be? How is that going to affect your future family, your finances, your feeling of fulfillment from yourself? How is it going to affect how is it going to affect your health in the long term? How is it going to affect the people that you spend the most time with, who you are one of their top 5 people they hang out with? How are you going to impact them if you never ever do this? And what are the patterns that are going to play out in your life as a consequence, as a consequence? And make it as painful and as vivid as possible. Make yourself see what's going to happen, hear what's going to happen, feel what's going to happen, and connect with the feeling that you like. It's not bullshitting. Like this is not like a theory we talk about. Like this is how it works. Like you either anchor yourself in the past, which happens automatically for everyone, because that's how mind organizes itself spontaneously, or you anchor yourself to the future towards your vision. So what happens if you stay anchored to the past? And just make it as painful as possible and make it as truthful as possible.
mm,
And when you finish this process, you're going to be like, I can't keep going without this.
mm. I think Jordan Peterson said it. Um, it's only when the pain of staying the same gets greater than the pain of moving forward. So when we're associating moving forward with pain and staying as we are as pleasure, when we're gonna do that. But then when the pleasure is in the moving forward and the pain is in the stagnation, that's when we're gonna really start making changes.
I- exactly. Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. And even though it's painful in the past, the biggest pain that the mind can imagine is the fear, is the pain that's behind the unknown. Because when it's unknown, you don't really know how bad it can get. And this is why the law of familiarity comes in place, where it sucks, but at least I know what it's about. Like, at least I know how much it sucks. Like, I don't have to risk it getting worse. But risking it getting worse is risking to change something which was necessary to move forward. So unless that risk, like when the pain is so bad that risking the unknown becomes an option, like pain has to become so bad that you risking it, the unknown becomes the option. And
mm.
that's when it becomes, that's when you have the internal motivation.
So the pain of the unknown is the pain of being of staying where you are is greater than the pain of the unknown.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And
And
the
then
pain
you
of the
take the
unknown is
unknown,
quite
you
great.
make, what did you say?
The pain of the unknown can be quite great, can't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I believe it is in me.
When you go there, when you suddenly create, like when you put together what is going to be that pain if nothing changes, then it's like you will have a motivation to actually explore what is behind the unknown. What is it that I want? And when you have that, now it's known, right? So you know what's going to happen. You know how much shit it's going to be if you keep going the same, and you know how amazing it's going to be when you take action and possibly take risk, but it's going to be worth it because this is how amazing it's going to be.
Mm,
And this is very difficult to talk about with people who are in the toxic positivity mindset, for example, or this modern spirituality where it's all about love and all about, like let's just meditate ourselves to bliss and everything else is going to fall its place.
mm. Yeah,
It's
it's
through
more
pain
getting
that
down and
change.
dirty.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's like more of the tantric path. I was learning about how the tantric path is about going into your shit, going into your desires consciously, compared to the yogic path, which is just to avoid them. Both aiming for the same destination, but two different paths. And it definitely
Mm.
seems like your path, the path that you're talking about now, is, although you might not label it as tantra, but it's more that kind of going down into the shadow aspects, into the hidden emotions, and bringing light to those darker areas of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I found it the most in my relationship. Like that was the biggest wake up call when it comes to this.
let's say that again.
The biggest wake up call for me that it's impossible to get by those by like that the way of like wanting to be positive all the time and avoiding the bad stuff and avoiding tension is just impossible. Like that's like the relationship was where I learned this the most, the deepest.
Relationship to women, you're talking about.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So how is that? Please explain that then. How has this work improved your relationships with women? Can you talk a little bit about how they were before and how it is now?
Mhm. Well, when I started the men's work for my own personal reasons, which was the nice guy syndrome or the nice guy pattern. And back then I was really like
Nice.
fawning, people pleasing, helpless. Yeah. It was really bad. And it was getting at me like mentally, like I had this impossible to stop thinking, it got to anxiety, sometimes to the edge of the panic attack, and it was just not enjoyable. And then I learned about releasing, emotional processing, and meditation, and all these other tools, NLP, all these other tools that help you feel better simply. And I needed at that time to stabilize myself emotionally, to get grounded, and to just be able to express myself freely with women. But then I was in a relation, then I ended up, or I ended up, like, then I started a serious relationship, and all this releasing stuff and all this um like changing state, like changing my internal state and connecting myself with vision and just like being in these high emotions and positive emotional states, it just stopped working. And it stopped working because I needed to do changes. Like I need to do shift the way I communicate so that the things that were problems repeatedly stop being problems. And that means saying stuff like, I don't like what you're doing. It's disrespectful. These are the consequences if you keep doing that. Don't do that. Instead of that, do this. Or instead of that, tell me how you feel. Or instead of that, do this, like being very direct about what I want, about what I need. And you can't it's difficult. Like you have to push through, like you have to say that believing is the right thing to do as you feel fear, especially in the beginning. But when that happened, suddenly like the dynamics started to change in my relationship as well. And things that used to be problems that were repeated problems started to change because my girlfriend, my fiance now started to change. And then she affected the way I was. And I kept doing these things and I was learning, I was getting my grounding better. And now I have no problem to say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. It's disrespectful. Stop doing that. Instead, do this or tell me this.
Hmm.
And this would have been impossible. This would have been impossible for me a year ago, year and a half ago.
Interesting.
So, so there's this idea that if you work through your traumas, if you understand your traumas, and if you heal the emotional wounds that are there, things will naturally get better. And I think that's correct, but it's like half of the equation. The other half of the equation is what do you want? What has to happen in order for you to get it? What kind of discomfort do you have to deal with in order to make it happen? And part of that is to learning how to lead, learning how to communicate assertively, how to be direct yet caring, how to be loving yet firm, and all these dichotomies.
Hmm.
So I don't know if I answered the question, but like this is what came up
Yeah, you
when
did,
we talk
man.
about this.
Yeah, for sure. So there's balance there. It's not just going into the directness. If you just direct all the time, you're missing out half of the piece, right? We're missing out. We want to feel love as well. And I know not
Yeah,
every guy has their focus on that. But if you said to anyone, you could have any all of your goals could come true at the flick of a finger, but you can never experience love. Who's going to say okay to that? Like everyone
mm,
knows deep down that love surpasses everything.
mm,
But yet we seem to be afraid to talk about it or admit it. And sometimes talking about it can put men off, like, oh, I don't want to go into that love thing, which is
yeah,
understandable because a lot of guys in men's circles talking about love is doing it from a very feminine place. And like, let's all be loving. But when it's
yeah,
merged with the grounding and the more masculine presence, then it's like this perfect union. I think David Dida calls it the union of heart and spine, right?
yeah,
And
yeah. That's a good metaphor.
yeah, not just all spine, but not just all heart. And
I
that,
absolutely agree.
mm,
Absolutely agree. And I think from those shift that I made, like I did, one of the things that changed for me in terms of we can call this spiritual beliefs or like very high global beliefs is the importance of love and what else is important. I did think like love surpasses everything. Love is the highest thing to pursue. And now I don't think the same because now I believe it's love and respect and they are in a yin yang relationship. And I can see it at myself looking back. If there is no respect, if I don't have respect as a value, I become hostage of love. because I have to be good. I have to be nice. I have to try harder. I have to forgive and like say, okay, it's okay. I love you. You didn't have bad intentions. Like bullshit. If it's disrespectful, it's disrespectful. And it has to be, there's something has to be done with that. Like there's like love cannot flow when there is not respect.
Mm,
So I think they're like equally important. Love is the feminine force, respect is the masculine force. And only when they're merged together. And I mean, I still talk about women and like the relationship with a woman. The relationship can be beautiful.
mm. So do you seek respect over love?
That's a good question.
Mm,
As a man, yes.
mm.
Because when
There's-
respect is there, love flows effortlessly.
mm,
When there's no respect, love is a difficult thing.
mm. Definitely can feel that, man. I remember the first time a woman told me that I think she actually said she trusts me. So it wasn't respect, but it was trust. And I think probably argue that if she doesn't respect you, then she won't trust you. But that one sentence, I trust you, was like, whoa, that fired off a lot in my body. I was like, oh shit, this feels really good. Wow, to
Mhm.
have, yeah. So I think maybe there's similarities with, I thought it was respect, but it wasn't, it was trust, but it's,
I'll say disrespect. I'll say because if you go one level deeper on what it is about men that we love being respected, and what is it about women that women love to be loved, I think for men it's leadership. Your leadership is respected. So your path, your vision is being accepted and embraced and honored. This is what men experience as respect. So when she says, I trust you, she means that wherever you go, whatever you do, however you will be thinking from now, I respect and honor that, and I buy into that by
mm,
choice. And that's an absolutely incredible experience for a man. And
mm,
for women, I believe, and this is where this is polarity coming into the place. For women, it's love for the feelings. Like all your feelings are beautiful.
mm,
And I love you, even though you have all these feelings. In fact, I love you because of all these feelings, even if it's anger, shame, sadness, guilt,
mm.
um, whatever. So I do believe it's respect because of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that respect can fire us up to actually, okay, to start carving out a future now with
Yeah,
more courage because it just seems like that's the beautiful yin and yang of the masculine and the feminine, right? She
yeah,
trusts us to be taking the steps forward.
yeah,
And I also was listening to, I think it was Chris Bale talk about how technically she's leading, but from more of an intuitive place. And we women are, I don't think he said this bit, but like women rule the spiritual, men rule the physical.
yeah,
So in terms of the physical leadership, we're making the steps forward. We're going into where it's dangerous to make sure it's safe for her.
yeah,
But she's got the magic of her intuition. And if we're not attuned to her, then we're just doing it for us, doing it for me, doing it for ego. But when we can attune to her and her emotions, we can almost sense her intuition, and therefore it's sort of like an us rather than a me thing.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think one thing is that there's difference between leading and initiating. I think what you were referring to was initiating. She can initiate something happening between you two. But as long as you are the one who keeps the outcome in mind, which is your vision, you're going to be leading. So she can give you insights from another realm or from her intuition, a very strong intuition that you have no chance whatsoever to ever like
Mm.
get into as deep as she can. But you have that, then you use that, and you're in this together. So she's going to help you to get there to that vision. But because
Mm.
she's on board 100%, she's going to get there with you. And that's the
Mm.
beautiful synergy.
This chat has totally gone in a different direction to what we originally planned, although it's all similar stuff, but it's been great and it's just what I've needed to hear personally in my life. Um, there's been moments in the last couple of years where I've hit some very high elated emotional states around my future, and
Mm,
it's allowed me to create what I've created so far. But in this last couple of weeks, although I have been taking some pretty big action steps, internally I haven't been feeling it. And I've been feeling
mm,
in a lot of lack. And if I'm honest, I've kind of been losing a lot of belief that I'm actually able to do what I'm doing. Like the belief's
mm,
gone. So I've been fighting that, trying to get that belief back. And I also catch myself doing it for other people because I want to finally prove to some people in my life that I can do it. And that's been a pattern for me for years. And this chat has reminded me that I can find internally the good feelings around my future, that it is possible, as well as it's also possible that I don't do it. They're both perfectly possible realities based on what's going on inside of me. But it's
mm,
also given me the motivation to start writing again
mm.
and getting out what's in the way. Because there's a lot of doubt going on, and I feel like if I could just sit down and maybe with you suggest just almost embodying my doubt and then just free flowing that on paper and seeing what comes out.
Yeah.
Because there's this fear that, oh, if I do that, I'm going to start creating more of it, right? If I just start writing, oh, I doubt this is all possible, blah, 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 is that going to like put me in that direction of more doubt? Or would you agree that that's a good releasing tool?
Well, I would say it depends. Like if you feel crippling doubt that and it's in your body and it's almost overwhelming and preventing you from being constructive and taking action, then I would just sit with it.
Mm.
But when you sit with it for long enough and there's no shifts happening, you know that it's not about something you need to get out of your system and out of your body by processing it, by doing the emotional processing with it, but by actually it's a fuel that you need to use to make yourself propel forward at a faster pace.
Mm.
So if it's doubt about the future, if you keep going your direction, then find a way to metabolize this into something constructive. For example, doubt of how the future is going to look like if you don't do what you need to do. And then feel all the pain that's in there. And that is going to make you, okay, fuck it. And then you're going to get grounded. And suddenly, what do I need to do? And suddenly, when you ground, like energetically speaking, when the energy goes down, you connect it with yourself because you know, like, on the existential level, what happens, what bad happens if you don't do anything. Suddenly, you get access to the creative energy and to the more positive emotions, and you are in motion already.
Mm.
And one thing that I just connected, like in our like to connect the two conversations that we had, if you have a woman and she says to you, "I trust you," and you have zero vision at all, the first thing that happens if she says, "I trust you with my life," the first thing that happens is you say, "Fuck, like I'm not ready for this. I need to do something." And you're going to go through the exact same process. Okay, what do I want with my life? How do I want my life to look like? What do I want to give to her? How do I want to make her the happiest woman, luckiest woman in the world? Suddenly you have a vision, suddenly you're focused on it, suddenly it starts amazing, it starts to feel amazing, it's compelling, and you start to take action. It's the same thing, it's just that it happens through a different
Mm.
trigger.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I hear you there. Oh, brilliant, man. Yeah, we just hit the hour mark. I think there's a lot there for people to go on, man. Really appreciate you coming on. It's been such a cool chat. Thanks for sharing your personal story as well. That's really nice to hear. Can you let
Thank you, it was a pleasure. I really
Thanks.
enjoyed this as well.
Oh, please, man. Can you share where people can find you and if you've got anything coming up, any events
Hmm.
or
I think the best place to connect is my website, bymaros.com, bymaros.com. And everything I do is in there. There are two free ebooks, one on nice guy pattern, the other one on the relationship polarity. There's a lot of articles that I wrote where people can get a lot of insights and understand themselves better. Men, especially. In fact, men only, women can understand men better thanks to those. And then I'm going to be doing a webinar next week on the relationship polarity. It's one of the last free webinars I'll be doing. So if this podcast is up until then, people can join. But all
yeah,
the
man.
information is going to be on the website.
Cool. I'll make sure it goes up this week.
Okay.
When's the webinar?
Next Monday at 7. That's 11th of November at 7 p.m. Central European time.
Okay, cool. Hmm. Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I wanted to say same to you. It was a pleasure here as well. And I wish you a lot of good luck and a lot of strength with the podcast because I think it's an incredible thing to do. And podcast about men's work is a beautiful thing to do as well.
Yeah,
So
man.
thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.